Lyra stood in the center of the great hall with her hands bound by silver chains. The chains were not heavy, but they burned against her skin like fire. Around her, the High Council of Velrun sat in their tall chairs, looking down at her with cold eyes. Their silver skin glowed under the blue lights of the chamber. Their violet eyes showed no mercy. She had known this day would come. She had refused to bond with Commander Draven, a powerful male who had killed her brother in a duel 3 months ago. The duel was legal. The killing was permitted by law. But Lyra could not forget the smile on Draven's face as her brother fell. She could not forget how he had laughed. When the council ordered her to become Draven's wife, she said no. Just one word. No. That single word had brought her here. High Counselor Vorn rose from his seat. He was her uncle, her father's brother, but there was no love in his face. There had never been love in her family. Only duty, only power, only the endless game of politics that the Velrani played like others played with toys. "Lyra of House Seren," Vorn announced, his voice echoing through the hall. "You have been found guilty of defiance against the Council's will. You have refused a lawful bonding. You have brought shame upon your house." Lyra said nothing. She had learned long ago that words meant nothing to these people. They had already decided her fate. Speaking would only give them pleasure. "The punishment for your crime is exile," Vorn continued. "You will be bonded to a human and sent to live among them. You will never return to Velrani space. Your name will be removed from the records of House Seren. From this day forward, you are no longer one of us." A murmur went through the hall. Even some of the council members looked surprised. Exile was rare. Exile through bonding to a human was almost unheard of. It was considered the greatest shame possible. The Velrani had known about humans for nearly 100 years. They were a young species, barely reaching the stars. They were emotional, loud, and messy. They laughed too easily and cried without shame. They touched each other constantly, even in public. To the Velrani, who valued control and coldness above all things, humans were little better than animals. To be sent to live among them was worse than death. Lyra's mother sat in the crowd watching. She did not speak, she did not cry. She simply watched as her daughter was condemned, her face as empty as stone. Lyra had not expected anything different. Her mother had watched many terrible things happen in their house and had never spoken once. The guards led Lyra away to a holding cell on the orbital station. She would wait there until the human arrived to claim her. She did not know his name. She did not know what he looked like. She knew only that he had agreed to this arrangement for reasons she could not understand. 3 days passed slowly in the small cell. Lyra did not sleep much. She sat on the hard bed and stared at the wall, trying to prepare herself for what was coming. She had heard stories about humans. They were violent, some said. They fought wars among themselves constantly. They ate the flesh of animals. They were ruled by their emotions rather than their minds. She wondered if the human would beat her. She wondered if he would use her and throw her away. She had seen how Velrani males treated their bonded females. She expected humans to be worse. On the 4th day, the door opened, and a guard told her to follow. They walked through long corridors until they reached a small meeting room. The door slid open, and Lyra saw him for the first time. He was not what she expected. The human was average in height, neither tall nor short. His skin was a warm brown color, so different from the silver of her people. His hair was black and slightly messy, as if he had not looked in a mirror that morning. His eyes were dark and soft, like deep water. He wore simple clothes, nothing fancy or expensive. His hands were rough, the hands of someone who worked with them. When he saw her, he did not smile with hunger or cruelty. He simply looked at her with something that might have been sadness. He bowed, not a small nod, but a proper bow, low and respectful. "My name is Kim Taiho," he said. His voice was quiet and calm. "I know you did not choose this. I know you do not want to be here. I did not choose this either, but that does not matter right now." He paused and took a breath. "I want you to know that I will not make this harder than it has to be. I will not hurt you. I will not force you to do anything. I just ask that you give me a chance to prove that." Lyra stared at him. She had prepared herself for many things. She had prepared for anger, for cruelty, for cold demands. She had not prepared for this. She did not know what to do with kindness. She said nothing. Words were dangerous. Words could be used against you. She had learned this lesson many times. Taiho did not seem bothered by her silence. He simply nodded, as if he understood. "The ship leaves in 2 hours," he said. "It is a long journey to New Gyeonggi. That is the colony where I live. It is a farming world, mostly. Quiet, green." He smiled a little, and it was a strange smile, almost shy. "I think you might like it. Or maybe you will hate it. Either way, it will be your home now." The guard handed Taiho a datapad to sign. He signed it without reading, as if the legal words did not matter to him. Then he looked at Lyra again. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "The food on the station is not very good, but there is a small shop that sells noodles. They are warm at least." Lyra did not answer, but when he turned and walked toward the door, she followed. She did not know why. Perhaps because she had no other choice. Perhaps because something in his voice made her want to believe him, even though she knew better than to believe anyone. They walked through the station together, the human and the exile. People stared at them. Velrani whispered behind their hands. Lyra kept her eyes forward and her face empty. The noodle shop was small and bright. Taiho ordered 2 bowls and paid with human currency. When the food came, he pushed 1 bowl toward her and began eating from his own. He did not watch her. He did not wait for her to thank him. He simply ate, giving her space to do whatever she wished. Lyra looked at the noodles. They smelled strange, but not bad. Slowly, she picked up the utensils and took a small bite. It was warm. It was good. She ate in silence while the human sat across from her, asking nothing, demanding nothing. And for the first time in many years, Lyra felt something crack inside her chest. She did not know what it was. She was afraid to find out. 2 hours later, they boarded the ship together. Lyra watched through the window as the Velrani station grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared among the stars. She was leaving everything she knew. She was going to a strange world with a strange man. She told herself it did not matter. She told herself she did not care. But deep inside, in a place she had learned to hide, a tiny spark of hope began to glow. The journey took 12 days. Lyra spent most of that time in her small cabin, alone with her thoughts. Taiho did not bother her. He knocked once each day to tell her that food was ready in the common area, but he never pushed when she did not answer. He simply left and came back the next day. She watched him sometimes through the half-open door. He spent his hours reading or talking with the ship's crew. He laughed easily, a warm sound that felt strange to her ears. The Velrani did not laugh like that. They smiled with purpose, laughed to show power or mockery. But Taiho laughed at small things, silly things, like a joke from the pilot or a funny picture on his datapad. On the 12th day, the ship landed on New Gyeonggi. Lyra stepped out onto solid ground and stopped. She had never seen anything like this world. The sky was a soft blue filled with white clouds. The air smelled of grass and earth and something sweet she could not name. Fields of golden grain stretched toward the horizon, moving gently in the wind like waves on an ocean. The Velrani homeworld was cold and gray, covered in metal cities and underground tunnels. Lyra had never stood in an open field before. She had never felt wind on her face that was not recycled through machines. "Welcome to New Gyeonggi," Taiho said, standing beside her. He was smiling again, that shy smile she did not understand. "It is not much, but it is home." They walked along a dirt road for nearly an hour. Taiho offered to carry her small bag, but she refused. She did not want to owe him anything. He accepted her refusal without argument and simply walked beside her, pointing out things along the way. That tree was 100 years old. That river had the best fish. That hill was perfect for watching the sunset. Lyra said nothing, but she listened. The house appeared around a bend in the road. It was small and simple, built from wood and stone. Flowers grew around the front door in colors Lyra had never seen. The windows were large, letting in the golden afternoon light. Inside, the house was clean and warm. There was a kitchen, a living area with soft chairs, and a hallway leading to other rooms. Everything was simple but comfortable. There were no expensive decorations, no symbols of power or status. Just a home. Taiho led her down the hallway and stopped at a door. "This is your room," he said. He opened the door and stepped aside so she could look. The room was small but nice. There was a bed with clean white sheets, a window that looked out over the fields, a desk, and a closet. On the desk sat a small vase with purple flowers. "The lock is on the inside," Taiho said. "You can lock it whenever you want. No one will enter without your permission." He paused. "Including me." Lyra looked at him. She searched his face for the lie, the trick, the hidden meaning. But she found nothing, just tired eyes and a gentle expression. "Why?" she asked. It was the first word she had spoken to him since they left the station. Taiho thought about the question. "Because everyone deserves a space that is their own," he said finally. "A place where they feel safe. I want you to feel safe here. Even if you never trust me, even if you never like me, I want you to at least feel safe." He left her alone after that. Lyra stood in the middle of the room for a long time, not moving, not thinking. Then she walked to the door and looked at the lock. She turned it. The click was small but loud in the quiet room. She sat on the bed and waited. She waited for the knock that would demand she open. She waited for the angry voice, the threat, the punishment for locking him out. She had locked a door once before, in her father's house, and her father had broken it down with his own hands. But the knock never came. The house remained quiet. After an hour, she heard soft sounds from the kitchen. The smell of cooking food drifted under her door. A few minutes later, she heard footsteps in the hallway. They stopped outside her room. Something was placed on the floor. Then the footsteps walked away. Lyra waited a long time before she opened the door. On the floor sat a tray with a bowl of rice, some vegetables, and a cup of warm tea. There was no note, no demand, just food. She took the tray inside and ate slowly. The food was simple but good, different from Velrani food, but not bad. The tea was sweet and calmed her stomach. This became their pattern. For 2 weeks, Lyra stayed mostly in her room. Taiho brought food 3 times a day, leaving it outside her door without a word. Sometimes she heard him working outside or talking to neighbors who came to visit. But he never tried to force her out. He never complained about her silence. On the 15th day, Lyra woke early. She lay in bed and listened to the sounds of the house. She could hear Taiho moving around in the kitchen, humming a song she did not know. She could hear birds singing outside her window. She could hear the wind in the trees. Something inside her shifted. She was tired of the small room, tired of fear, tired of waiting for pain that never came. She got up, washed her face, and opened her door. Taiho was in the kitchen, stirring something in a pot. When he saw her, his eyes widened slightly, but he did not make a big reaction. He simply smiled and said, "Good morning. Are you hungry?" I am making soup. Lyra nodded. She sat at the small table and watched him cook. His movements were easy and practiced. He added vegetables and spices without measuring, tasting as he went. When the soup was ready, he poured 2 bowls and sat across from her. They ate in silence, but it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was peaceful. After breakfast, Tai-Ho asked if she would like to see the greenhouse. Lyra did not know what a greenhouse was, but she nodded anyway. They walked together across the fields to a large building made of glass. Inside, it was warm and humid. Plants of all kinds grew in rows: red fruits, green leaves, yellow flowers. Tai-Ho walked among them like they were old friends. He touched their leaves gently. He checked their soil. He talked to them in a soft voice, telling them they were doing well, encouraging them to grow strong. "You talk to plants," Lyra said. It was not a question. "They listen," Tai-Ho replied with a small laugh. "Or maybe I just like the sound of my own voice. Either way, they seem to grow better when I talk to them." On Velron, physical work was shameful. Only low-class workers touched dirt. A male of any status would never kneel in soil, never dirty his hands. But here was Tai-Ho, kneeling in the mud, checking roots with his bare fingers, and smiling like it was the best thing in the world. "Why do you do this work?" Lyra asked. Tai-Ho looked up at her. "Because people need to eat," he said simply. "The colony is growing. Families need food. Children need food." He shrugged. "And I like growing things. I like watching something small become something big. It makes me happy." Happy. Such a simple word. The Velrani did not speak of happiness. They spoke of duty, honor, power. Happiness was weakness. Happiness was for children. But looking at Tai-Ho, kneeling in the dirt with a smile on his face, Lyra wondered if the Velrani had it wrong all along. She stayed in the greenhouse all morning, watching him work. When he offered her a small shovel and asked if she wanted to help plant some seeds, she hesitated. Then, slowly, she took it. The dirt was cool and soft under her fingers. It felt strange. It felt good. For the first time since leaving Velron, Lyra smiled. It was small and quick, gone before anyone could see. But it was real. And in the warm light of the greenhouse, surrounded by growing things, she began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this strange human was exactly what he seemed to be. 3 months had passed since Lyra arrived on New Gyeonggi. The days had fallen into a gentle routine. She woke early, shared breakfast with Tai-Ho, and spent her mornings in the greenhouse. In the afternoons, she walked through the fields or read books from Tai-Ho's collection. In the evenings, they cooked dinner together and talked about small things. She had begun to speak more. Not much, but enough. She asked questions about the plants, about the colony, about Earth and human history. Tai-Ho answered everything with patience, never making her feel foolish for not knowing. He seemed genuinely happy that she was curious. She learned that he had come to this colony 5 years ago, after his parents died in an accident on Earth. He had needed a fresh start, he said, somewhere far from the memories. His sister Minji had followed him 2 years later. She worked as a medic in the colony's small hospital. Lyra had not met Minji yet. She was not ready for more humans. Tai-Ho understood and did not push. One morning, Lyra woke feeling strange. Her head hurt, and her body felt heavy, like she was moving through water. She ignored it and went to the greenhouse anyway. She had work to do. The new seedlings needed care, but by midday, she could barely stand. The world spun around her. Her skin burned with fever. She tried to call for Tai-Ho, but her voice came out weak and broken. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was the glass ceiling of the greenhouse, shining in the sun. She woke in her bed. The room was dark except for a small lamp on the desk. Her body ached everywhere and her throat felt like sand. She tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pressed her shoulder down. "Do not move," said a female voice. "You are very sick. You need to rest. Lyra turned her head. A human woman sat beside her bed. She had the same dark eyes as Taiho, the same gentle face. This must be Minji. What happened? Lyra asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Local pathogen, Minji explained. Your immune system does not know how to fight it. We have given you medicine, but it will take time for your body to heal. She paused and smiled. You scared my brother very badly. He found you on the greenhouse floor and carried you all the way here. I have never seen him run so fast. Lyra looked around the room. In the corner, she saw him. Taiho was asleep in a chair, his head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. His clothes were dirty, still covered in soil from the greenhouse. Dark circles hung under his eyes. He has been there for 2 days, Minji said quietly. I told him to sleep in his own bed, but he refused. He wanted to be here when you woke up. He was afraid you might die alone. Something cracked inside Lyra's chest. It was the same feeling she had felt on the station, eating noodles with a stranger, but stronger now, much stronger. Why? She asked. I am nothing to him. I am just an arrangement, a contract. Minji looked at her with soft eyes. You are family now, she said simply. That is what family does. We take care of each other. We stay. Family. The word echoed in Lyra's mind long after Minji left to prepare medicine. On Velron, family meant something very different. Family meant duty and obedience. It meant standing silent while her father made deals with powerful men. It meant watching her mother look away when bad things happened. It meant being sold to a killer because political power was more important than a daughter's heart. But this human, this quiet man, who grew plants and talked to seedlings, had stayed awake for 2 days because he was afraid she might be alone when she died. Lyra did not understand. She wanted to understand. Taiho woke an hour later. He blinked slowly, confused, then saw that her eyes were open. Relief flooded his face so strongly that Lyra could feel it from across the room. You are awake, he said. His voice was rough from sleep. How do you feel? Terrible, Lyra admitted. Taiho laughed. It was a tired laugh, but real. That is fair. You were very sick, but Minji says you will be fine. A few more days of rest and medicine, and you will be strong again. He stood and stretched his back with a small groan. Then he walked to her bed and sat in the chair Minji had left. He did not touch her. He just sat there. Close, but not too close, his presence warm and steady. Thank you, Lyra said. The words felt strange in her mouth. She could not remember the last time she had thanked anyone. On Velron, gratitude was weakness. You did not thank people for doing what they were supposed to do. But Taiho was not supposed to do anything. There was nothing in their contract that required him to care. Nothing that forced him to sit by her bed for 2 days. He had done it because he wanted to. Taiho looked surprised by her thanks. Then he smiled, almost shy, and looked away. You do not need to thank me, he said. I did not do anything special. Anyone would do the same. But Lyra knew that was not true. She had met many people in her life. Most of them would not cross a room to help her, much less carry her through fields and sit sleepless by her side. The following weeks passed slowly. Lyra recovered bit by bit. She was weak at first, barely able to walk to the kitchen, but Taiho was patient. He helped her without helping too much. He let her struggle when she needed to struggle and stepped in only when she asked. She learned more about him during those quiet days. He loved poetry, especially old Korean poems about nature and seasons. He sang while he cooked, always off-key, and laughed at himself when she pointed it out. He was terrified of insects, but pretended not to be. He missed his parents terribly but did not speak of them often. And he never, not once, lost his temper. One day, a group of colony officials came to the house. They had paperwork about water rights or land boundaries or something Lyra did not fully understand. One of them, a large man with a red face, saw her sitting at the kitchen table. "Is that the alien?" he asked Taeho loudly. "Should she be here? This is official colony business." Taeho's face changed. The gentleness did not disappear, but something hard appeared beneath it, something like iron. "Her name is Lyra," Taeho said. His voice was quiet but cold. "She is my wife. Where she is welcome, I am welcome. Where she is not, neither am I." The large man opened his mouth to argue, but something in Taeho's eyes stopped him. The other officials shifted uncomfortably. After a long moment, the red-faced man muttered an apology and looked away. The meeting continued. But the mood had changed. When the officials left, none of them looked at Lyra with disrespect again. That night, Lyra sat on the porch and watched the stars. Taeho came out with 2 cups of tea and sat beside her. They did not speak for a long time. "You did not have to do that," Lyra finally said. "Defend me. They are your people. I am the outsider." Taeho shook his head. "You are not an outsider, not to me." He took a sip of his tea. "And those men were wrong. It does not matter who they are. Wrong is wrong." Lyra looked at him, really looked at him. This small, quiet man who grew plants and made soup and stood against his own people for someone he barely knew. She realized suddenly that she was no longer afraid of him. She had not been afraid for a long time. What she felt now was something else entirely. "Taeho," she said quietly. He turned to look at her. "I think I am starting to understand," she said. "What kindness looks like." He smiled that shy smile of his. "It is not complicated," he said. "Kindness is just treating people the way you would want to be treated. Everyone deserves that. Even people society throws away. Even people like her." Lyra did not cry. She had not cried in many years. But that night, after Taeho went to sleep, she sat alone in her room and felt the tears come anyway. They were not sad tears. They were something else, something like hope. 8 months had passed since Lyra arrived on New Gyeonggi. The small farmhouse had become her home in ways she never expected. She knew every corner of it now. She knew which floorboard creaked near the kitchen. She knew how the light fell through the windows in the morning. She knew the smell of Taeho's cooking before she even opened her eyes. She worked in the greenhouse every day now, not as a guest, but as a partner. Her Velrani education had included biology and chemistry. She had learned these things to serve her family's political interests, but here she used them to help plants grow. She tested soil samples and designed better fertilizers. She bred new types of vegetables that grew faster and tasted better. The colony farmers had started coming to her for advice. She had made friends too. Minji visited often, bringing sweets from the hospital cafeteria and stories about her patients. An old human woman named Grandmother Yoon lived down the road and taught Lyra how to make pickled vegetables. A young farmer named Junho always bowed respectfully when he saw her and asked about her research. Lyra had never had friends before. On Velran, there were only allies and enemies. Everyone wanted something. Everyone had hidden motives. But these humans seemed to want nothing except her company. It was strange and wonderful. She and Taeho had grown closer too. They talked more freely now. They laughed together at silly things. Sometimes their hands touched when passing dishes at dinner, and neither of them pulled away quickly anymore. Lyra did not know what these feelings meant. She had never felt them before, but she was not afraid of them. Everything was peaceful. Everything was good. Then the ship appeared in the sky. It was a Velrani vessel, large and silver, with the mark of the High Council on its hull. It descended from orbit and landed in the main colony square. People gathered to watch, curious and nervous. Velrani rarely came to human worlds. Lyra knew, even before the door opened, who had come. High Counselor Vorn stepped out of the ship with 2 guards behind him. He had not changed at all. The same cold eyes, the same empty smile, the same sense of power that filled the air around him like poison. He saw Lyra in the crowd and nodded slowly. "Niece," he said, "you look well. Better than I expected, living among animals." Taiho stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Lyra. "Welcome to New Gyeonggi," he said politely. His voice was calm, but Lyra could see the tension in his shoulders. "May I ask the purpose of your visit?" Vorn looked at Taiho the way someone might look at an insect. "I have business with my niece. Family matters. I am sure you understand." They met in the colony's meeting hall. Vorn insisted on privacy, so it was just the 3 of them. Lyra sat on one side of the table. Vorn sat on the other. Taiho stood near the door, quiet but watchful. "The Velrani Empire has been discussing its relationship with the human colonies," Vorn began. He spoke in common, the shared language, so Taiho could understand. "There are those on the council who believe we have been too generous, too accepting. They argue that humans are not worthy partners." He paused and smiled. "I am here to offer you a chance to come home." Lyra stared at him. "Home?" "Your exile can be reversed," Vorn said smoothly. "Your status can be restored. House Seren will welcome you back. All you need to do is one small thing." "What thing?" Vorn leaned forward. "Denounce your marriage. Tell the council that the human treated you badly, that he was cruel, violent, primitive. Give testimony that supports our position that humans are not fit partners for the Velrani people." The room went silent. Lyra felt Taiho's eyes on her, but she did not look at him. She kept her gaze fixed on Vorn. "You want me to lie?" she said. "I want you to help your people," Vorn replied. "The Empire needs unity. We need to show that humans are beneath us. Your story could be very useful. A noble daughter, forced to marry a savage, suffering in silence until she finally escaped." He spread his hands. "It would be a powerful message." Lyra thought about the station where she had been chained. She thought about the council hall where she had been condemned. She thought about her mother's empty face and her father's cold calculations. Then she thought about Taiho, the bowl of noodles on the station, the room with a lock on the inside, the 2 sleepless nights by her bed, the quiet voice saying she was family now. She started to laugh. It surprised her as much as it surprised Vorn. She had not laughed like this in years, maybe ever, but the sound bubbled up from somewhere deep inside and would not stop. "Dominate me?" she said when she could finally speak. "You think he has dominated me?" She shook her head. "He has never once tried. He gave me my own room with a lock that I control. He asks permission before he touches my hand. He sat awake for 2 days when I was sick because he was afraid I might die alone." Vorn's face twisted with disgust. "Those are the actions of a weak male. A proper Velrani would—" "A proper Velrani beat me when I spoke without permission," Lyra cut in. Her voice was hard now, all the laughter gone. "A proper Velrani killed my brother and smiled while doing it. A proper Velrani sold me like property because I dared to refuse." She stood up slowly. "You call humans primitive. You say they are ruled by emotion. But I have lived among them for 8 months, and I have learned something. Kindness is not weakness. Gentleness is not failure. Humans feel things deeply and act on those feelings. They love fiercely and protect what they love." She looked at Taiho. He was watching her with wide eyes, his expression unreadable. "The Velrani taught me that emotion was shameful," Lyra continued, turning back to Vorn. "That caring was a flaw. That power was the only thing that mattered. But I was wrong to believe them. We were all wrong." She straightened her spine. "I will not lie for you. I will not betray the man who showed me what kindness looks like. Go back to Velran and tell the council whatever you wish. But my answer is no. Vorn's eyes went cold and hard. You will regret this, he said quietly. The Empire does not forget. The Empire does not forgive. Good, Lyra replied. Neither do I. Vorn left that evening. His ship rose into the sky and disappeared among the stars. The colony returned to normal. People went back to their work and their lives, but something had changed. Lyra stood outside the farmhouse and watched the sun set over the golden fields. Tejo came to stand beside her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. You did not have to do that, he finally said. You could have gone home. You could have had your old life back. Lyra shook her head. That was never my home. That was never my life. She turned to look at him. This is my home now. This is my life. Tejo was quiet. Then, slowly, carefully, he reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm and rough from work. He held her hand gently, like she was something precious. I am glad you stayed, he said softly. So am I, she replied. They stood together and watched the last light fade from the sky. The stars came out one by one, filling the darkness with tiny points of light. The next morning, Lyra went to the colony administrative office. She filled out the paperwork for human colonial citizenship. She renounced her Velrani status, and in the space for her new name, she wrote 2 words, Lyra Kim. When she came home and showed Tejo the papers, he did not speak for a long time. He just looked at her with those soft, dark eyes, and she thought she saw tears forming at the edges. Thank you, he whispered. No, she said. Thank you for everything. And for the first time, she reached out and took his hand herself. 2 years had passed since Lyra arrived on New Gyeonggi as a frightened exile with chains on her wrists. Now she walked through the colony's agricultural center with her head held high, a data pad in one hand and a cup of tea in the other. The building was 3 times larger than the old greenhouse, filled with plants from a dozen different worlds. Her research had made it possible. People greeted her as she passed. Human farmers asked about their crops. Young scientists wanted her advice on experiments. Children ran up to show her interesting bugs they had found. Everyone knew Lyra Kim, the woman with silver skin who had turned a struggling greenhouse into the most successful agricultural research center on the frontier. She had changed in many ways. She smiled more easily now. She laughed without thinking about it. She touched people when she talked to them, a human habit she had picked up without noticing. Her clothes were simple and practical, covered in soil stains that she no longer felt ashamed of. She had even learned to cook, though her meals never tasted quite as good as Tejo's. The biggest change was one that others might not see. The fear was gone. The constant waiting for pain, for betrayal, for the moment when kindness would reveal itself as a trick. She had waited for 2 years, and the moment never came. It was not coming. She understood that now. She was safe. She was home. The center's newest wing was dedicated to refugee services. Over the past year, other Velrani had started arriving on New Gyeonggi. Females, mostly, who had heard whispers about an exile who found something better among humans. They came broken and afraid, just as Lyra had been, and Lyra helped them heal, just as Tejo had helped her. Kindness is not weakness, she told them. Gentleness is not submission. These humans feel everything deeply, and they are not ashamed. They cry when they are sad, and laugh when they are happy, and love without calculating the cost. It seems strange at first, but you will learn, as I learned, that this is not primitive. This is what living truly means. Some of them understood quickly. Others took more time. Lyra was patient with all of them. She remembered how long it had taken her to trust a bowl of soup left outside her door. One evening, Lyra came home late from the center. A new refugee had arrived that day, a young girl barely old enough to be called an adult. She had been terrified of everything, shaking like a leaf in a storm. Lyra had stayed with her until she fell asleep, holding her hand and telling her stories about the golden fields and the warm sun. The farmhouse was dark, except for a light in the kitchen. Taiho was still awake, waiting for her. He did this every night, no matter how late she worked. He said he could not sleep until he knew she was home safe. She found him at the table, reading poetry by candlelight. His hair was gray at the edges now, and new lines marked his face, but his eyes were the same, soft and warm, full of quiet love. "Long day?" he asked. "Yes, but good." She sat down across from him. "The new girl will be okay, I think. She just needs time." "She has you," Taiho said. "That is a good start." Lyra smiled. She reached across the table and took his hand. Their fingers fit together perfectly, familiar after 2 years of small touches and quiet moments. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "I saved dinner. It is nothing fancy, just rice and vegetables." "That sounds perfect." He warmed the food while she washed her hands. They ate together at the small table, talking about nothing important. The center's funding request had been approved. Grandmother Yoon was feeling better after her cold. Junho was getting married next month to a girl from the eastern farms. Small things, good things, the fabric of a life built day by day. After dinner, they sat on the porch and looked at the stars. The night was cool and clear. The colony lights twinkled in the valley below like fallen stars. "Taiho," Lyra said after a long silence. "Yes?" She thought about how to say what she wanted to say. She had never been good with words. On Velron, words were weapons. You said only what would hurt or help you. You never spoke just to speak. But here, among humans, she had learned that words could be gifts. They could be given freely, expecting nothing in return. They could heal wounds and build bridges and light fires in cold hearts. "I used to think being sent to you was a punishment," she said finally. "The worst thing the council could do to me. A fate worse than death." Taiho nodded. He was listening, patient as always. "Now I know the truth," Lyra continued. "Being sent to you was not a punishment. It was the only thing that saved me. The council thought they were destroying my life. Instead, they gave me a real one." She squeezed his hand. "You gave me a real one." Taiho was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "You saved yourself, Lyra. You did all the hard work. You opened your door when you could have stayed hidden. You trusted when you had every reason not to. You chose hope over fear." He shook his head. "I just tried not to get in the way." "That is not true," she said. "You showed me what kindness looked like when I had forgotten it existed. You treated me like a person when my own people treated me like property. You stayed awake for 2 days because you did not want me to die alone." Her voice cracked slightly. "No one has ever cared for me the way you do. No one has ever loved me the way you do. No one has ever deserved it more," he replied softly. They sat together in the darkness, hand in hand. The wind whispered through the fields. Somewhere far away, a night bird sang. "Do you remember what you said to me on the station?" Lyra asked. "The first day we met?" "I said many things." "You said you would not make this harder than it had to be. You asked me to give you a chance." Taiho nodded slowly. "I remember. I am glad I gave you that chance," she said. "I am glad I trusted you. Of all the choices I have ever made, that was the best one." He turned to look at her. The starlight reflected in his eyes. "And of all the chances I have ever been given," he said, "you are the best one." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. He put his arm around her, pulling her close. They fit together like 2 pieces of a puzzle that had finally been solved. Lyra thought about the Velrani Empire, far away among cold stars. She thought about the Council and its politics, the endless games of power and cruelty. She thought about her old name and her old life and the girl she used to be. That girl was gone now. In her place stood someone new, someone stronger, someone who had learned that strength did not come from coldness, and power did not come from fear. The Velrani called humans primitive. They said that emotion was weakness, that kindness was foolishness, that love was a chain that bound the strong. But Lyra had learned the truth. Humans were not primitive. They were simply kind. They felt everything deeply and were not ashamed. They loved fiercely and protected what they loved. They cried and laughed and hoped and dreamed without hiding any of it. In a galaxy that had forgotten what kindness meant, that made them special. In a galaxy that had traded warmth for power and hearts for stone, that made them the most advanced species of all. Lyra Kim looked up at the stars and smiled. She thought of all the Velrani who had thrown her away, expecting her to suffer and break. She hoped they could see her now. She hoped they could see what she had become. She hoped they could see that she was happy. She was finally, truly, completely happy. And she owed it all to a quiet human who grew plants and made soup and showed her what love really meant. The stars wheeled slowly overhead. The wind carried the sweet smell of growing things. And in the small farmhouse on the edge of the golden fields, two people held each other close and knew that they were home. Not the home you are born into, not the home others give you, the home you find, the home you build, the home you choose.